Hi there. Welcome to this special edition of Global Reiki Webinars. It's not even actually a webinar or a live broadcast right now. I'm Rachel Goldberg. I'm here with Phyllis Furumoto, who has a lot of interesting and exciting and very wise Reiki experience to share with us. And we're doing part 2 of our last live broadcast, which was all about the role of money in the practice of Reiki. Now that webinar, which aired on April 2nd of 2016, just earlier this month, we had so many questions from people who wrote in advance, as well as questions that came in on the live feed and in our Facebook group since the event has happened that we weren't able to get to. We decided to make a second addition to answer all of those questions so that Phyllis could answer all of those questions. So just to give a bit of a review for those of you who were with us, by the way, if you haven't seen that recording, it's on the same YouTube channel. It's also in the Facebook group, Global Reiki Webinars. Go ahead and watch that. I highly recommend it. And for those of you who've already seen it, here's a little bit of a review from Phyllis.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to do this second part of money. Obviously, this is a big discussion point for many, many people. And the questions have been very interesting. And in order to answer the questions and keep a kind of wider view about money, I'd like to just remind you about my presentation of this diagram of the relative and the absolute universe, and that the practice of Reiki is our bridge from the relative to the absolute universe, and that crossing that bridge is one of the most important things that we do as Reiki students. Money is a physical, is something physical that we have to assess how we are doing. Are we in the relative world or are we in the absolute world? And it's really interesting because I've done, since the broadcast, a month ago, actually. I've been in the Netherlands and also in Denmark, and we got onto the topic of money a little bit. And I realized, I had an insight the other day that money is our physical way of demonstrating our interdependence as human beings. And if you trace your money, where it goes and what it's doing, you connect to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And the question for me is, for you, is how do you want, what is the energy that you want to accompany that money? And what is it that you're actually communicating to the other person? Is it appreciation? Is it a job well done kind of message? Is it, well, I have to pay you or else, and you feel a little bit blackmailed? I mean, it's very interesting to just examine your own experience of money and then put it into the framework of having this be a part of a spiritual practice where we get to see that everything that we do, including how we hold money, how we use money, and how we receive money, is a part of our spiritual practice. So that's my review, and that's the place from which I will be answering these questions.
Cool.
So take it away, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you for that. I received that in a new way, even from the last webinar about our interconnectedness. So thank you.
Thank you.
So the first question that was submitted in advance of the original webinar came from Dina. And Dina wrote, in my Reiki practice, money comes when it is needed for key pivotal moments. Otherwise, it feels like Reiki practice doesn't pamper the practitioner, me, money-wise. Is it a way to keep a practitioner humble and unspoiled? Thanks.
I love this question. Dina, I actually don't know because, and I really understand what you're saying. So I'm going to paraphrase it for the others of you, and also just to check whether I actually understand your question. So many times people say, well, I'd love to come to your workshop in so-and-so, and I just don't have the money. And what I do inside myself is I translate that to be, and it's not the way I want to spend my money. Mm. And I really encourage all of you, when you start to say, well, I can't afford it, or I don't have the money, that you change it to say, I'm not choosing to spend my money this way. It will give you more command over your own decisions. Like, your decisions then are not being dictated by the entity money. It's being claimed by you, right? So I think, Dina, what you're saying is that if you want to go to a workshop and all of a sudden somebody pays you back a loan that you wrote off or decided that they would never pay you again, or somebody comes up to you and says, oh, I'd like to have a series of 4 Reiki treatments, and that's just exactly the right amount of money for the workshop that you want to do. And it seems like the flow of money through a practitioner's hands serves a practitioner. And what I always say is, Reiki gives us what we need, not what we want. I mean, I would like to have more money, of course, but you know, I think, oh, I'd like to not worry about fixing my car this month, or I'd like to, you know, be able to put a new roof on my house, or without freaking out and saving money and so on. But, you know, these are a part of a spiritual practice. You know, it's very, very difficult to sometimes imagine that if you had enough money, could you actually still maintain a spiritual practice? Well, of course, but it's a whole nother perspective and a whole nother set of lessons. Everybody has their lessons, and a lot of us have lessons in choosing how we spend our money.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. So our next question comes from, are you ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question comes from Joshua, and Joshua wrote, as I understand it, the money is an exchange, but also a way to get the recipient in a state of thinking that attaches value to what they're receiving, whether a session or attunement. Is it just as effective if working out other forms of exchange? For instance, I have happily shared Reiki treatments with someone willing to spend time volunteering for causes that I believe needed people. Would the same principle work for the exchange needed for attunements? Thanks, Joshua.
Joshua, good question. Well, I agree with you that in your first sentence where you say money is an exchange, but it is also a way to get the recipient in a state of thinking that attaches value to what they're receiving. That's very relative world thinking. And it's what we all think, you know, like I went to the grocery store today and I paid $3.99 for a little baby watermelon, and I thought, well, is this really worth it? So we always ask this question, you know, Is this worth it? Does it have a value for me? And am I going to spend my money this way? The other thing, though, that from the other side in Reiki is that what people are actually doing is that they're participating either in their healing when they pay for a session. So it's not about only putting value on the treatment, but it's like, this is the way I participate. I come, I give you whatever the amount of money is that the practitioner is asking for, and I lay on this table for an hour or however long the treatment lasts, and I listen to the advice given by the practitioner. This is my participation in my own healing. And one of the things about Reiki is that we are not healing the people. We are, some people like to say, I'm a Reiki healer. It's, I think, means something different to them than it does to me. For me, if I would identify myself as a healer, I feel like I would be actually taking responsibility for that person's healing. And for me, one of the gifts of Reiki is that that responsibility is totally on the person, the person who's being healed. And I have total faith in our bodies that and our beings, which means not just our bodies, but the other layers of ourself, that our bodies and our beings are totally capable of healing. Sometimes we just need more energy, like plants need water to grow. It isn't that we're giving the plants anything extra. We're just giving them water. We're giving them energy to grow, and that's what's happening with Reiki. So if you shift over and go across the bridge to the absolute world, people can say, okay, so this is what you ask, and I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give you whatever you ask, because I want whatever you have. I want to participate in the class, or I want to participate in the treatment. And quite often, people after a treatment, excuse me just a sec, people after treatment or during a class will say, oh, if I had known that this is what it would feel like, or this is what I would get, I would have paid this money gladly instead of being so reluctant. So that's an indication that that person has crossed the bridge from the relative to the absolute. Exchange works really well as far as I'm concerned, but exchange is very tricky in that you have to need what they are exchanging, and the person has to be giving a part of themselves. So you have to work this out, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And that's just something that's an experience. I can't tell you how to do it. You have to use your intuition. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. So let's go. Thank you, Phyllis, for that response. Let's go to our next question, which is from Daniela. And Daniela wrote, hello, sometimes in a Reiki therapy session, I find that it is very hard for me to receive money from my patients. How can I change this attitude of mine? Thanks, Daniela.
Wow, Daniela, good for you. Good question. But do I have a good response? Well, here's my homework for you. I would recommend that you have 4 treatments, if you can, a treatment every day for 4 days in a row. and you pay for those treatments. And then during the treatment, your theme is, what keeps me from receiving gratitude? And I believe that this will really assist you in getting to some of your belief systems and your ideals that are unconscious right now. Receiving money for treatment is not just receiving the person's participation, but it is also receiving their gratitude. And I believe that this is a key for you. So good luck with your homework.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phyllis, for that. And also, Daniela, thank you so much for that question, because I needed to hear that from Phyllis. And I know so many people personally who also will really benefit from that exercise. So thank you both.
Yeah, and it's a great exercise. It's a very difficult one. I acknowledge, and I've heard from many of my students when I give them this advice as well. Great.
Awesome. So our next question is from Jay. And Jay wrote in, whenever money is involved in a practice of any kind, regulation is not far behind. We have seen the effect of regulation on most industries, from agriculture to medicine. And I believe there should be a place for both free practice and for a fee practice of Reiki. It should not be necessary for a free practitioner to be licensed for his or her practice or carry liability or E&O coverage. There should, I'm not sure what that is. Phyllis, do you know what E&O coverage is?
No, I don't.
Some kind of insurance. There should be no way to sue someone who offers a practice for free, since the user should be responsible for the outcome, not the practitioner. It is quite the opposite for the paid practitioner, and regulation, insurance, and taxation should be spread liberally on these folks. Perhaps the state will be satisfied if we offer the souls of the paid Reiki practitioner to the state, so that we free practitioners may have some peace. Aloha. What do you think, Phyllis? Thank you, Jay. Let me show Phyllis to answer that.
Wow. Well, I have about 3 or 4 questions, Jay, for you right off. Number one, it's like, why would you want, okay. I'm not sure why you separate people into free practice and for a free practice, for a fee practice. So I'm going to try to answer this question myself, so you'll be clear about what I'm talking about. When I teach Reiki, first, second degree, and actually and masters, I feel that I'm teaching a folk art. And this folk art is first for me and my development, then for my family and friends. It is important for me and for my students that they be mindful of exchange when they give treatments, especially a series of treatments. Like if you're treating your aunt because she's going through chemotherapy, for instance. It's very important for an exchange to happen, because it's a long-term commitment from both sides. So then there are the people who, hopefully after a time of being a folk art practitioner, they go into what I would call a public practice, which means that you have an office, you have a separate space where you do Reiki, you have set fees, you adhere to obvious good business practice, and you have enough experience of Reiki that you can give people a good treatment and sound advice. But I'm not talking about diagnosis or anything. I'm just talking about the obvious conversations that you might have with, a person that you've just treated. And especially if they have a certain condition that they're interested in. So the state in its regulations, especially for Reiki, is not about whether people are paid or not. It's really about what is being offered and what is being received. And it's very important for a Reiki practitioner not to promise even their ante that they will take away all the side effects of their chemotherapy treatment, or they will have no pain, or they will cure their diabetes, and they can stop their medication, and so on. I mean, it's just very important to maintain appropriate ethics and integrity in all of your dealings, whether you're being paid for the treatment or not being paid for the treatment. So I don't make the distinction between these two, but I kind of get that you're talking about a folk art practice and what I would call a public practice. Personally, in this day and age, it's unfortunate, but not everybody who says I'm a Reiki practitioner has actually been has actually had the appropriate training and connection with the energy of Reiki. They maybe are just beginners and they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't know where they are with their people and so on. So, the state is responsible for making sure that what's offered to their citizens is on the up and up, is actually honest offering. And as long as the Reiki practitioners are being honest in their offering, then they shouldn't have any problem with the regulations. And they're not going to come after somebody who's treating their family and friends. I mean, this is not where the state enjoys going into. What they want to do is be sure that the people who have a little sign or open an office or have a public practice, they want to be sure that these people actually have some understanding about their own responsibility to the public. And I'm totally for this. So I hope this does give you peace. And I trust that when we move into conversations with the governments and the people who are given the responsibility to protect consumers, just remember that we are also consumers. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question that Jack the Cat here wanted to be present with us while I ask is from Susanna. And Susanna wrote, "How can I manifest lots of money?" What's your, Phyllis, understanding and experience about it? If it was as easy as sending Reiki to the situation, all Reiki practitioners won't have any issues with money. What was Hawayo Takata's point of view about prosperity and manifesting money? Thanks for addressing this hot topic. And thank you, Susanna, for asking it.
Well, In truth, your question, how can I manifest lots of money? I don't know. I'm not a manifester of money. It's not my thing. Um, what what what's so interesting about Reiki, and when you look at the relative and absolute aspects of working with money and Reiki, is that I've had lots of really interesting experiences. And we're supposed to have issues with money. We're supposed to be able to work some of these things out, because we're not only working out issues around money. Money is always connected to the other parts of a Reiki practice, like what is the form of teaching that you are entering into, and what does the master ask? Some masters ask you to come for first degree for 3 hours every day, 4 days in a row. And other people ask you to come for 1 day for 2 hours. And my guess is that the amount of money that is being asked in these two instances is really different. So, as the practitioner or student comes to Reiki, whether it's a class or getting treatment, there is a learning thing that's happening. It's like, how do I show gratitude? How do I receive gratitude? How does this person participate in their healing? What is it that I'm receiving in exchange for my time and energy? How do I pay for the lights and, washing the sheets after they leave? All of these things are inherent, and some of them are in the relative world, and a lot of them are in the relative world. But then we go to the absolute world about showing gratitude, or actually about just feeling, is there a balance in what has happened in this exchange between the practitioner and the person who's receiving the treatment? When you send or give yourself hands-on treatment and ask about a question about money, then you have insights about yourself. And these insights are really important. It's really a wonderful way to have Reiki teach you. So my suggestion is, let Reiki teach you. It's a lifetime of learning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question is from Kate. And Kate asked, I am finding that people are reluctant to part with their money to learn Reiki in the current financial climate. How should I make my living? Get another job? Thanks for your question, Kate.
Yes. I'm sure, Kate, that you are asking this question not just for yourself, but for many people. I always find it interesting to have people go back to when they decided to spend money to take first degree. And what was their motivation? Well, it wasn't because you had extra money. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard that. Oh, I have $150 extra money. I think I'll find something to do with it. Oh, yeah, I think I'll take Reiki. That's a story I've never, ever heard. I've heard lots of other stories, but not that one. And I find that people, when they have less, what we call discretionary income or discretionary money, like money that they can use to go out to dinner or to buy a new pair of boots, or wash their car if they have to pay for it, so on, that they are becoming more and more definitive about how they spend their money. This is a really interesting process, and one of the things that you brought up is then, how do you live? How do I maintain my own balance of flow, like in and out? And I believe that Reiki really gives us the opportunities. So I've seen in other people's lives something come up when money is really an issue, and Reiki just leads them to something that feels like, should I do this or should I not? Am I really doing Reiki or am I not? So there's a friend of mine who lives in a very small community, and she was trying to figure out how to earn her living, because usually she traveled to teach classes and so on, and then she would come back to her very small town. But she decided that she just needed not to travel anymore. And after a while, because she was not traveling, the local health clinic came and asked her to be a part of their staff. Mm-hmm. And that was really wonderful for her. And it was something that she had dreamed of doing, but forgot about the dream. And so that's one answer to that. The other answer is that I feel that in this climate of a lot of students really wanting to go deeper into Reiki, that masters, when they reach a certain maturity, have a lot to give students. And these can be done in, a series of a series of workshops, or maybe a one-day thing or something, another thing, to be able to augment your earning a living. Earning a living through Reiki, for me, does not mean teaching first and second degree and doing treatments. I mean, that's a very narrow point of view. Money comes to us through lots of different means, and it's amazing. So what I would suggest that you do is really open yourself to creativity and to possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis, so much. So our next series of questions, our next several questions, focus on mastery and money around that. And this first question is from Irina, and she wrote, "Hello, dear Phyllis. Could you please clarify what is the pre-master period? I mean, when a person makes a request to become a candidate to Master of Reiki Usui Shiki Ryoho, how long should this period be? Should it be paid for? Which are the duties of the candidate, and who takes the final decision if the candidate is ready or not to become a master? Thank you very much in advance, and thank you, Irina, for sending in the question. I look forward to hearing what Phyllis has to say."
Yes. Okay, so my disclaimer. So first of all, I am going to speak from my own practice. This may or may not be the practice of Irina. There are lots of people practicing Usui Shiki Ryoho, and the form is not quite mine. So I can only talk from my own form. And I want you all to be able to hear the generalities of it, and perhaps be able to apply it to your own circumstance. So that's my offering, and that's my request for you. So for me, I started out in the 1980s initiating masters very quickly relative to what I do now. And it was because of the time and also the era of Reiki that we were in. And luckily for me, those masters that I initiated during the 1980s, most of them are still practicing Reiki. It's really impressive, and they're still teaching. In the 1990s, by this time, Reiki had become like a really cool way to earn your living. So there were a lot of masters initiated in the late 1980s and the first part of the 1990s, that when different forms of practice began to really be popular, the class sizes became smaller, and it was more difficult for people to really earn their living easily through Reiki. And so masters were pushed to stay at home more, and in order to earn their living, they were opening up public practices, which I feel like was exactly what needed to happen, because they weren't practicing Reiki themselves. We were just wandering around teaching. So I felt like Reiki gave us exactly what we needed. And it was really great. And in that, about half of the people that I initiated during that time left Reiki, because they said, if I can't earn a living with it, then I'm not going to practice it. And I have to say, shocked and in some ways shamed. I was very humiliated, because I just trusted that they were in it for the long haul, that they were really committed to Reiki no matter what. And when they couldn't earn the living that they had been used to, and just quit and actually just left the practice of Reiki entirely, it was just really a difficult period. And I stopped initiating masters for about 2 years, because I was really confused. And then the master candidates who continued with me through this kind of very odd period of time, where I didn't pay any attention to them, and I just kind of told them to go away. They came to me and they just said, look, this is my calling. I can't help it. This is not about earning a living. This is what my life is supposed to be. Well, how could I say no? So then I moved into this other place where it was obvious that Reiki was going to be their teacher and I was going to be their mentor. And that's the way that I hold people preparing for mastery. The mastery of a person needs to grow inside of them. I don't make a master. That person who is preparing, one of the steps that happens during their preparation, after some years usually, is that they are recognized as a master by a student. In other words, somebody coming to them and saying, I'm waiting for you to be initiated as a master. Mm-hmm. That's recognition from the outside. And I, as their mentor, have the possibility to also recognize when I feel like the stages of development of a aspiring master have been met, and there is a big yes inside of me. If there is any doubt, then I absolutely can't initiate them. And if there's any doubt in the master candidate, that person is not going to sit in a chair and let me initiate them. So it's really not a decision. It's a state of being that we both come to. Mm-hmm. And right now, the average time for people to be initiated as a master in this particular way is about 5 years. But I want you to know that the master candidates coming to me have mostly 10 years of Reiki before they come and ask me. So even then, they just study with Reiki, and there's a whole list of things I tell them to do. But it's not about doing the list. The list is about things they can do to learn about Reiki, basically. So this period of time for me is not paid for. It's I mean, actually, the whole thing is not paid for. So I really want the master candidate at all times to be free to go to somebody else, to go to another system, or to not even be initiated, to find out, oh, I thought this was my path, but it's not. And that freedom is only given if there's no money exchanged. So I don't ever take money until the day of the initiation. Mm. So that's from me.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. I'm gonna re-listen to that one.
Okay.
So our next question comes from Kiyoshi.
Can we start with Leandros?
Yes. So we'll go to Leandros' question. And Leandros wrote, what is the appropriate cost today for giving or receiving the Reiki mastership? And he has a second question, is there a required apprenticeship period for a master that a master candidate must spend besides his or her own master before he or she can be given the master? If yes, what is the minimum? Thank you, Leandros.
Yeah. Okay, so Leandros, your question has the feeling that this is not about a person stepping onto a spiritual path. It sounds more like what is the next level of a technique going to cost me? And what about the apprenticeship? So there's a little bit of this energy in it, and I don't know if that's true for you, but I just want to, at this point, make a difference. If the master was learning a skill, excuse me, then we could set, a kind of program. But every person is different, and every person comes to us from a different place. So I've had master candidates come to me who actually haven't been initiated in first degree. There was a woman who came to me and she said, I want to be a master of Reiki. And I said, okay, so who did you take first degree from? Oh, I haven't done that yet, but I know I want to be a master. And she took first degree from me and then waited a couple of years. She took second degree. She waited a couple of years. But in that time, I knew that she was, on the path of mastery. And after 8 or 9 years, she was initiated. And she knew that from herself. So what's important for me is that this isn't a technique or a training period. And I don't like those terms because it takes and puts the mastery into the relative world. And really, the mastery is, 90% absolute. It's really learning about, crossing this bridge into the absolute and understanding that we are all one, that everything you do as a master affects every master of Reiki, no matter what form you practice. So that's why I feel like I can give you my experience and have it be accessible maybe to you and your own experience and your own form of teaching. The appropriate cost for giving and receiving the Reiki Mastership is up to the form. I don't have any right or wrong about that. You know, in the form that I teach and practice, what we ask is $10,000 US. And in some countries, there is a currency equivalent that is asked. But that's not what everybody else asks, and it's not what everybody, all the forms adopt. So, you know, you should know the form that you are practicing and then follow that form rather than mine. I mean, that's not necessary. So I believe that the next question that kind of begs to be asked is why $10,000? And it was something that was asked by Hawaii Takata, and I was really lucky that I didn't have to decide about the fees for the different levels of initiation that I give to people. And here's the thing. On the day of the initiation, I asked the masters to bring $10,000 in cash. And it has to be in cash. Because I believe that the actual money has energy. You know, if it's in a check, it's okay. But wire, and sometimes because of, you know, circumstances, they wire the money, which is really weird. So if I can, I get the money out of the bank and I take the cash to the initiation because it's important to me. You know, what they're doing is they're saying, yes, I give you everything I have. I surrender to this practice, everything I am. This is my commitment. Mm. And that's what the $10,000 represents to me. And I, as a representative of this practice, accept it. And then I am with that person as a mentor, a teacher, a fellow student, for the rest of our lives. You know, that's my commitment, is that tomorrow I'm not going to say, oh, I'm not doing Reiki anymore. Too bad. No, that's not where I am. So, you know, the $10,000 and receiving it is a responsibility, but an acknowledgement of this kind of relationship. And it's the beginning of a relationship, not an end of a relationship. So they're not paying for something. It's an acknowledgement of relationship for me. Mm. So, you know, if somebody else feels like $5,000 is enough, then, and that's what you want to give, and you're clear about what the relationship is going to be after that, that's fine. You know, it's what all of my students say is, I will give you whatever you ask because you're the master. And it's good attitude. Mm. Yeah.
Phyllis, I'm wondering if you're all right with me asking a question, because I've got a lot of relative universe going on as I hear you share what your practice is, and thinking about how it differs from my practice and my teacher's practice. And I imagine a lot of people who are watching this, since there are many different forms, there's a part of me that really, is it all right if I go on?
Sure.
Question. There's a part of me that really, as I'm building relationship with you, is wanting to know, like, oh, well, what's her way? Like, how can I, you know, get it to be this way? And I also think from what you're saying that that's very relative universe, and I like there's a really big discrepancy between where I've been and what you're describing, and then, you know, where I'm feeling around it now, and I'm wondering if you're willing to just offer some response to all of that. Please and thank you.
You know, when I met with the other, with many of the other 22 masters that that Hawaii Takata acknowledged and initiated in 1982 after her death in Hawaii, we were there to honor our teacher. And at some point, of course, we exchanged treatments. And it was obvious that some of us started at the head and some of us started in the abdomen. The same hand positions, just different starting place. And then, you know, others went on to have a different thing about talking during the treatment, or, you know, how long you held your hands, you know, in one position and so on. But every one of us said, and this is what I learned from Hawaii Takata. And it was that gave us strength. And that gave us the common bond, like brothers and sisters. And, you know, because she did teach differently, actually, you know, in different places. I have no idea why. I'd love to ask her. You know, in the San Francisco area, somehow all the people that she taught there started with the abdomen because it relaxes people. And then in British Columbia, she started on the head over the eyes because it relaxes people. So, you know, what I hear about the initiation of masters is that each master candidate or aspiring master has a relationship with their initiating master. And that relationship must be respected and honored no matter what. And that master candidate needs to fulfill whatever that master asks of him or her. And it is that piece that, for me, we all have in common. Otherwise, we wouldn't be masters. And Reiki has taken us and taught us to a certain level. So one of the things that was very interesting for me in the 1990s is I started to meet people who I met 10 years before in the 1980s, who had started out at a totally different form of practice. You know, these are some of the early changes of the practice from Hawaii Takata. And the interesting thing is many of them had kind of morphed back to very close to the original form. Not because it's right, but because it's a natural way to be with Reiki, right? And a lot of our differences were softened. And that was true for these masters of Hawaii Takata as well. As we grew older and had much more worldly experience, our difference softened. So one of the things that's very important for me is not to go to the relative world to compare, go to the absolute. Because that's really where the truth is. You know, the relative world is only, you know, kind of what we ended up with. And it really does depend on your commitment and your surrender to the energy of Reiki that determines your path as a master.
Okay.
That's how I feel anyway.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So our next question is from Janice, who wrote, Kiyoshi, will get to you next. Janice wrote, I am a Reiki master in the Usui system. I find it very difficult when a person I have initiated into the first and second degree would like to undertake master's training with me, but due to being a single parent with an intellectually and physically challenged child, is unable to afford the financial investment. So not exactly a question, but some feeling that I imagine have some insight. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Janice, I really hear your concern, and my concern before the money is this parent actually prepared and able to be a Reiki master? So I'm not saying that this parent, it's not possible. It just will be much more difficult. And what I tell the master candidates who come to me who are concerned about $10,000 is I just tell them that is the least of your worries. And it is really true for me. I mean, my experience is that, you know, letting go of belief systems about yourself and who you are, changing your life so that you really live your commitment to Reiki, being able to nurture your family and have your own life while being a Reiki master is really important. So for some people, I ask them to raise their children to a certain age, depending on the child, before I will consider initiating them, because I feel like raising children is a mastery of itself, and that there are some children that really need to have the whole attention of their parent. It's important. So if I were benefiting life on this planet, if I were benefiting our societal advancement, if I were benefiting this student's spiritual practice, I wouldn't put them in a situation where they had to choose between their child and Reiki, because it's a no-win situation. So I've really learned that there's thoughtfulness, you know, around being a Reiki master. Being a Reiki master is not a right. It's a decision for that person to give 100% to this practice for their own development as a person, as a human being. And this particular situation is a whole nother mastery path. I mean, she's surrendered, or he needs to surrender totally to this situation. And if, in fact, this person could do both, then the money will come.
Mm-hmm.
The money will come. I mean, very few of the people that I've initiated have been able to be assured that the money will be in the bank. And there's always some special, miraculous, unbelievable story about money. And it's just not about the mechanical thinking of, you know, we work a certain hours, we get paid a certain amount, and that's how far the money goes. You know, that's totally relative universe. If we go to the absolute, there's money out there. Money just, it's not about falling from trees. It's really about coming to people at the time when it's appropriate. And when it doesn't, then it's a sign for me. And it very rarely happens. And sometimes I even question it myself when it's taking a very long time. And then something happens that I really get and the other person really gets why it hasn't happened before. So we just have to trust. Yeah.
Thank you. We have our next question from Kiyoshi. And Kiyoshi's first question is, I heard a rumor from a source with a strong credibility rating that your grandmother, Hawayo Takata, established a $10,000 fee to, paraphrased into my own words, create a boundary so that less people would contact her for Reiki so that she could have more time with her family. Is that true, or can you comment on that? Do you want to answer that before I read the second one?
Sure, why not? Yeah. Well, this throws me into being your granddaughter, and I just want you to know that as far as I'm concerned, I can't imagine that that's true. You know, $10,000, the number 10,000 in the Japanese, I don't know, world is very important. And since, it means like the everything. You know, it means the universe. And it's a very interesting number because in many other spiritual practices, the number 10,000 comes up a lot. Like in Tibetan Buddhism, doing 10,000 prostrations is a practice that is asked of some students in the practice when they get to a certain stage, and so on. It's like 10,000 is this number of the universe that actually has very great spiritual meaning. I don't know if she actually knew that or it was just a number that came to her. I have no idea. But to create a boundary, it's just not her. I mean, she was very clear about when people would come to her, for instance, and say, well, I don't have the money for first degree. Will you let me do it in payments or something? And she would go, no, you save the money, I will be back, and the next time you can take the class. And if they protested, then she would start asking them things like, do you smoke? Well, if your answer was yes, guess what? Stop smoking and save your money. If you go out to dinner, you know, then she says, well, then, you know, just stay home and cook for yourself. Eat less. You know, I mean, for her, it was totally a matter of choice. And that was what was really important. So I don't know, Kiyoshi, where your credibility rating is, but I would say that for me, it has a very low one.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, Phyllis. Our next question from Kiyoshi is, within Europe and the United States, what percentages of what income classes would you estimate practice Reiki? For example, in the US, 70% are lower class, 17% middle class, and 3% upper class. And in England, 40% are lower class, 55% are middle class, and 5% are upper class. Remember, that's only an example to demonstrate what I'm seeking in a reply. Approximately how many Reiki practitioners do you know who earn a net income of over $3 million US or more per year? Thank you for your question, Kiyoshi.
Well, Kiyoshi, I really don't know what your purpose is in asking these questions. I find them a bit disrespectful. I don't feel you in these. I feel like they're a jab or something at trying to provoke some conversation that actually has absolutely nothing to do with Reiki. It has nothing to do with their practice, and it doesn't benefit anybody. So, and I can't answer them. I mean, how do I know what percentages of income classes practice Reiki? I mean, I haven't a clue. Why would I want to? And why would I be interested? I'm not. I'm interested. I don't differentiate people into income class. For me, a student is a student, and that's why I ask the same of a 10-year-old as I do of a 70-year-old. They pay the same amount of money, they come to the same class, they get the same acknowledgement, they do everything the same, because every person, every human being, no matter who they are, has a right to receive Reiki if they ask for it. And a master has the right to decide whether or not they're going to make that part of their studentship and say, as Hawaii Takata would, come back next time when you've saved your money. But, you know, this is totally different, and I don't really get it. And I don't know anybody personally practicing Reiki or not practicing Reiki who earn $3 million a year. So I would say that that's, again, another provocative form. And even if they did, who cares? You know, if they do that much Reiki, that's great. And I guess if there's a little bit of weirdness around this, I just want you to know that my income is nowhere near $3 million a year gross. So I'm very happy with my Social Security now, because it actually allows me to meet my monthly bills most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you. So those were all of our questions that were submitted in advance. We do have 2 questions that came in on the live chat that we'll go to, and then some questions that came in afterwards on Facebook. So the first question that was live during the webinar earlier this month is from who said, "Hello, I have one question. What if I suggest the treatment? It looks like I am offering. In that situation, it feels hard for me to ask money. I think Reiki would be good for the person, but I don't mean for free." Thanks.
Well, you just have to be clear about that. You know, I tell people that Reiki is very, you know, that they might benefit from Reiki, and to make an appointment. And once they hear the word appointment, usually that's a kind of connection with them. There is a set fee. And I make it really clear that there is a fee. I mean, I'm not shy. If somebody said, "Gosh, looks like you need a massage, and I have an appointment, you know, at 3 o'clock tomorrow, would you like to come?" Then I would say, "And how much did you charge?" I mean, as the receiver of the massage, I don't assume that things are for free. Mm-hmm. So I think that this follows a very interesting thought pattern that that is kind of running through all these questions, and that is that something spiritual should be free. And I just want you all to know that Reiki is about allowing us to bring the absolute, the divine, into our daily world. And it also allows our daily world to come into the absolute so that we can see both sides of the coin at the same time. So all these paradoxes that we're working with, like, well, it's spiritual, but I can't live on nothing. is actually a great paradox. And it's a wonderful learning environment for the modern spiritual practitioner. We're all students of a spiritual practice. And that means that we're engaging in regular activity that brings us to a place to develop our own human spiritual self, and puts us into a relationship with something greater than ourselves. Whether we call that God or Reiki or divine or whatever. And the best thing to do, because I can't make general, this is what you do kind of statements, and I won't do that, is to actually ask yourself, what feels the best for me? And you have to be able to stand behind your own decisions. So don't be shy.
Thank you. That helped me with my relative comparison from earlier. So thank you,
Okay.
Phyllis, and thank you, Kira, for asking the question. Our next question came from Isabel Yeshe, who wrote, how about price for distant healing? When someone asks, can you please send some Reiki? How do we go about this? Thank you, Isabel.
Well, so first of all, we have to go to the practice. In my practice, I send distant treatment to people I know who have asked for treatment and that I cannot treat physically. So I very rarely treat people that I don't know. And I even very rarely treat people who, even more rare, I would treat somebody who asks like over the internet. Number one, because in truth, I don't have the time or the energy to do that. And the second thing is that I want to, for me, a distant treatment, I send, and they're very effective and they're very intimate. And I want to be able to build relationship with them. And if I don't know the person, then it's very hard for me to do that. Now, that sounds very, very strict, and it is. This is one side of it. And then the other side is that I'm really open to being of service. I feel that one of the things that this practice isn't very clear about is how do we then become able to serve. And I believe that I'm not actually able to truly serve because I'm not spiritually developed enough. However, Reiki gives us these instances where we can choose to serve. We can choose to send a treatment or pray for someone because we feel drawn to do that. And we don't need to ask for money. I mean, sometimes I think that what has not transferred from the Japanese culture to our cultures now, especially in the 21st century, is that the Japanese culture is built on service. They learn to serve in this incredible way. And like in Japan, you don't tip anyone because they are so happy to serve you, whether it's dinner or taking your suitcases or driving a taxi or whatever. And I don't know how to express that this, again, is another decision that as students of a spiritual practice, we are making. Like, there can't be rules for these things. You have to use your own personal discretion. So, of course, sometimes I send treatments to people because I somehow feel drawn to do that, and I can be of service. And I feel in that moment that it's my place to serve this person. And I don't worry about my other structure because I have that there. So I hope that this helps, and I hope it helps with answering a lot of the other questions that people have. You know, we have to balance these, and we can't, there is no way to do Reiki right, because there's no right way to do Reiki, because Reiki is not a technique. It is not something that we can be experts on. It's a path. So every decision that we make is a decision that will teach us something. And sometimes what it teaches us is, I will never do that again. And that's okay. That's okay, because, you know, how else are we going to learn it? And we have to be able to meet each situation fresh without this habit from the past or this rule from the past, or worried about the precedent that you're setting for the future. You have to be able to just be in the present and be there. You know? So I feel that though we have other questions from the Facebook page, that we should end it there. And yeah, and I feel really good about this hour and a half that we've spent with you all. And some of the reason that I feel that money is so kind of a magnet for us is because there's so much socialization, so many belief systems, and subtly, underneath it all, it's like we feel that the amount of money we earn, the amount of money that we have to spend on luxury items, the amount of money that passes through our hands in our lifetime somehow sets our value of who we are as a human being. And, you know, the biggest spiritual lesson is we are all equal. Our value is priceless. Every human life is worth the universe. And, you know, we need to be able to hold ourselves in that way as well. So let's just keep on learning, community. Let's just keep on practicing, and let's just keep on having questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. And thank you watching wherever, whenever you are. Thank you, everyone who submitted your questions. And thanks again, Phyllis, for taking this time to answer the questions. We'll see you in the Facebook group, Global Reiki Webinars, and look out for upcoming events. Thanks. Peace, love, and Reiki.